Today we're going to talk about one of my favorite subjects, Shelby GT350s. The story is legend. Ford needed something to make the Mustang a little more of a genuine race car. It was considered kind of a secretary's sports car, which is not the image Ford was really going for. They already had a relationship with Carroll Shelby. He was doing great things for the Cobras as well as the Ford GT program. So they made a deal with him and they said, we need you to hot rod a Mustang and make a race car out of it. That's street legal. The 65 Shelby came out. They made about 562 of them. Some of those were competition R models. The rest were street models, and the legend was born from there. The 65 is the purest, but with purity comes a rough and tumble demeanor that's not universally loved. I've owned earlier Shelbys, and they're a lot. I mean, they had side exhaust with barely any mufflers. They had overrider and then underrider traction bars that exhaust leaked through where they had been installed. They had a Detroit locker that chattered and clacked and was a little bit much. The pedal effort for both the clutch and the brakes are somewhere between unbearable and horrendous. So, you know, that's an acquired taste, and so they soon realized that they needed to soften them a bit. I mean, yeah, the idea was to make it an all-out race car for the street. Mission accomplished. They couldn't really sell many because it was a little rough and tumble. There's not a lot of problems with the 65 Shelbys, but one of them was a personality problem. It didn't look any different than a regular Mustang, really. They were all Wimbledon white. They all had side stripes that said GT350, and a lot of them had stripes over the roof and hood. But other than that, they looked just like any other Mustang. So the marketing people got involved and said, oh, we got to make this look a little different. For 1966, they softened the car a little bit and made it look a little different. The biggest change was they took the rather attractive slats out of the rear quarter window and put little plexiglass windows in there, which did finally make this look a little bit different than a regular Mustang. For 1966, you could also have a back seat. The 65s had the seat removed and a platform, fiberglass platform put in there with the spare tire mounted on it. Again, all-out race car. In 66, an automatic was available too for the first time. So, and the Detroit locker became optional and not standard as the early cars. Other than the race cars, all these early Shelbys had one engine option. It was the Hypo 289. Originally it was 271 horse with Shelby modifications, which included a different carburetor, headers, and a couple other little things. It was rated at 306 horsepower. They also made more of the 1966 models with a little softening and a little bit more pizzazz, with it looking a little different. They sold around 2,300 of them. The big news that year was they made a deal with Herz rental car company to make a Rent-A-Racer, and a pretty successful program overall. Of course, you know, what happened next was part of the legend, and people were racing these rental cars and they were taking engines out of them and putting them in Cobras with blown motors at the racetrack and such. So I don't think financially this was a good idea for Hertz, but it was a hell of a publicity stunt. Initially, they weren't considered as valuable or as pure or as good, but in today's market, they're right there with a standard 66 GT350, and they're all worth $200,000, $250,000 now. And of course, the first one, the 65, is gone through the roof. That the pure one is worth $450,000, $500,000. The big news in 67, both for the Mustang and for the Shelby Mustang, was the body style change. It's a little bit rounder, bigger car. Some say it's better looking. You could argue that it's less pure. And then on the Shelby, they really went all out to get it different looking from a regular Mustang. So It now has a nose extension with a super cool hood with a big scoop. It has functional side scoops on for both the brakes and then above just for ventilation. The tail panel was completely revised. So the 67 GT350 is a totally different animal than a 65 or 6. So in 1968, it was essentially the same model lineup, but they added a convertible. And but they moved production to Detroit. So purists will say that the last real Shelbys are the 67s. Those are the ones built in LA. In 69, the writing was on the wall. They did make both a GT350 and a 500 in both a convertible and a fastback. And then the very last year was 1970, and most of those were just 69s that they hadn't been able to sell. So that's essentially the 6-year history of the Shelby Mustang. So what's it like to live with one of these cars? Is it really a $200,000 Mustang? And the answer is, on paper, it is. Now, whether it's worth that much, that's for you to decide. It is a great driving car. You know, you're dealing with a car that was made by a very major manufacturer. So a lot, the sorting is really done even before Shelby got it. The HVAC works really well. The wipers work really well. This is, like I said, a factory air car, and the air blows cold back in 1967 because it was made by a big company who was good at it. So the other thing is, it's very easy to keep a Mustang, even a Shelby Mustang, running. The knowledge base is huge. There are tons of both Mustang and Shelby specialists. The club is great. It's just all this little stuff works on these cars and makes them real easy to live with. Great tour car, great date night car. Pretty much anywhere you go, it stops traffic. So they're a lot of fun. It's actually one of my favorites here in the collection. Unlike some more obscure marques, the Shelby is very well documented. SAC, Shelby American Automobile Club, has done a phenomenal job of figuring out fakes and recording details. There's a registry they put out. There's a registry just for 67 cars, and it has every car listed and who's owned it and what's been done to it. You know, as these things became more valuable, fakes came out. It's not that hard to fake a Shelby. The club has done a great job of eliminating that problem, which I think has added a lot to the value and the purity of the marque. Of course, if you're just collecting and you want the rarest and the purest and the first, which a lot of people do, if you can afford it, 65 is the way to go. And I say I love this car, and I don't know if I would swap it for a 65, but I wouldn't mind adding a 65 to the collection. So if you like this sort of stuff, please check out the website and like and subscribe to our channel, and thanks for coming by.
If you like this video and want to see more, make sure to hit that subscribe button and like this video. And to see more stories like this, visit us online at classicmotorsports.com.